Introduction. The Man Who Chased Tomorrow. In the sprawling digital metropolis of the 21st century, a world saturated with information, yet starved for wisdom, one name echoed with a peculiar frequency: Alex Vance. He wasn't a politician, a movie star, or a celebrity in the traditional sense. He was something newer, a figure forged in the crucible of code and silicon. A modern myth whispered in server rooms and stock markets. A modern myth whispered in server rooms and stock markets. To some, he was a savior, the architect of a brighter, cleaner future. To others, he was a reckless gambler playing with the fate of humanity. But to Alex himself, these labels were just noise, static obscuring the signal. But to Alex himself, these labels were just noise, static obscuring the signal. The only thing that mattered was the blueprint in his mind. The only thing that mattered was the blueprint in his mind. A detailed, audacious, and terrifyingly complex plan for tomorrow. This is not just the story of how a man built an empire of technology. It's the story of how a relentless, obsessive dreamer tried to build the future itself. Suitable one impossible challenge at a time. One impossible challenge at a time. Chapter 1. Echoes in the Garage. Chapter 1. Echoes in the Garage. Suitable for audiobooks didn't begin in a gleaming high-rise or a prestigious university lab. It began in the dusty, oil-stained garage of a modest suburban home in Ohio. It began in the dusty, oil-stained garage of a modest suburban home in Ohio. While other kids were outside playing baseball, Alex was conducting surgery on discarded radios and forgotten toasters. While other kids were outside playing baseball, Alex was conducting surgery on discarded radios and forgotten toasters. He was a quiet, introspective child, more comfortable with schematics and soldering irons than with playground politics. His fascination wasn't with the devices themselves, but with the invisible currents of logic that gave them life. He saw the world not as a collection of objects, but as a series of interconnected systems, many of them inefficient and broken. His father, a practical man who worked as a mechanic, would often find Alex late at night, surrounded by a halo of light from a single bulb. Muttering about signal paths and processing bottlenecks, he didn't quite understand his son's obsession. But he recognized the fire of a true builder. The defining moment came at age 14. A severe storm knocked out power to their entire town for nearly a week. While the neighborhood fell into a quiet darkness, Alex saw an opportunity. Using a discarded lawnmower engine, a car alternator, and a mess of wires that terrified his mother, he built a rudimentary generator. It was loud, ugly, and smelled of gasoline, but it worked. It powered a few lights, a hot plate, and the small television in their living room. For the first time, he hadn't just fixed something broken, he had created a solution. For the first time, he hadn't just fixed something broken, he had created a solution. A small pocket of order in the chaos. That feeling of bending the world to a more logical, more resilient shape became the driving force of his life. Chapter 2. The Silicon Valley Pilgrimage. Chapter 2. The Silicon Valley Pilgrimage. College was a brief and frustrating affair for Alex. He aced his physics and computer science courses, but bristled at the rigid curriculum that seemed more focused on memorizing the past than inventing the future. After 2 years, he packed a single suitcase, emptied his meager savings account, and bought a one-way bus ticket to California. He was making the modern-day pilgrimage to Silicon Valley, the promised land for those who spoke the language of innovation. He arrived with no connections and an idea that most considered academic fantasy: a new protocol for decentralized data transfer that could make the internet exponentially faster and more secure. A new protocol for decentralized data transfer that could make the internet exponentially faster and more secure. He slept on friends' couches and fueled himself with cheap noodles. Spending his days coding and his evenings pitching his idea to dismissive venture capitalists. They saw a scruffy kid with an abstract concept, not a viable business. Rejection became a familiar companion. They saw a scruffy kid with an abstract concept, not a viable business. Rejection became a familiar companion. One investor famously told him, "You're trying to reinvent the wheel. The world needs apps, not algorithms." That comment solidified Alex's resolve. He realized the gatekeepers of capital weren't interested in foundational change. They were interested in quick profits. So he changed his strategy. He finished the protocol, which he named Nexus, and released it to the world as open source. He gave it away for free. It was a move that baffled the financial world, but earned him immense respect within the developer community. He didn't make a dime, but he made a name. He was the kid who had rebuilt a core piece of the internet's plumbing. Not for money, but simply because it could be done better. Chapter 3. Chapter 3, Catalyst and the Currency of Trust. The reputation Alex built with Nexus opened doors. He co-founded his first real company, Catalyst, with a small team of engineers who shared his vision. Their mission was to solve the biggest hurdle suitable for the early digital economy: trust. People were still hesitant to use their credit cards online, fearing fraud. Catalyst aimed to create a secure, seamless digital payment system. The challenge was immense. They weren't just fighting technical bugs, they were fighting human psychology. They worked punishing hours, often sleeping in shifts under their desks. The company nearly collapsed during a fierce battle with a larger, well-funded competitor that tried to clone their technology and push them out of the market. During what the team later called the long winter, Alex made a critical decision. He poured the last of his personal funds into the company and pivoted their focus suitable for competing on features to competing on security. He personally wrote articles explaining their encryption methods, making their process transparent to build user confidence. The gamble paid off. Catalyst became the gold standard for online payments. A few years later, the e-commerce giant Omnimart acquired Catalyst for an astronomical sum. Suddenly, at the age of 28, Alex Vance was extraordinarily wealthy. But for him, the money wasn't the prize, it was the key. It was the resource he needed to fund the projects that truly mattered. The ones no venture capitalist would ever dare to touch. Chapter 4. Ether Dynamics and the Dream of Reusability. With his newfound capital, Alex did something that stunned the business world. With his newfound capital, Alex did something that stunned the business world. He didn't buy a yacht or an island, he founded a rocket company. He didn't buy a yacht or an island, he founded a rocket company. He started Aether Dynamics with a goal so ambitious it was widely mocked by the aerospace industry. To make humanity a multi-planetary species. The key, he argued, was fully reusable rockets. At the time, rockets were used once and then discarded, an incredibly wasteful process. That made space travel prohibitively expensive. The established giants of the industry, with their lucrative government contracts, had no incentive to change. Alex saw this as the ultimate broken system. The early years of Aether were a trial by fire. The first 3 launches of their Phoenix 1 rocket ended in spectacular explosions. The first 3 launches of their Phoenix 1 rocket ended in spectacular explosions. The media labeled him a reckless billionaire burning his fortune. His team was demoralized. During this period, Alex was a relentless presence in the factory. He worked alongside his engineers, dissecting wreckage, recalculating thrust vectors, and refusing to give up. He worked alongside his engineers, dissecting wreckage, recalculating thrust vectors, and refusing to give up. He famously said in a company-wide meeting, "We are not failing. We are discovering 1,000 ways not to build a rocket." The breakthrough came on their 4th attempt. The Phoenix 1 roared into the sky, deployed its payload, and then, against all odds, its first stage began its controlled descent back to Earth. The world watched, holding its breath, as the rocket landed itself perfectly on a floating platform in the middle of the ocean. It was a moment that changed everything. Aether Dynamics had proven the impossible was possible. Suitable altering the economics of space travel. Alex's ultimate goal wasn't just visiting other planets. It was to build industries in orbit, to move heavy manufacturing off-world and allow Earth to begin to heal. Chapter 5. Electron Automotive and the Charge for a New Era. While Aether was reaching for the stars, Alex turned his attention to a problem on the ground. The world's addiction to fossil fuels. He believed electric vehicles were the answer. But at the time, they were seen as little more than glorified, underpowered golf carts. He didn't start from scratch. Instead, he invested in and eventually took over a small, struggling EV startup called Electron Automotive. He poured his energy and capital into transforming it. His vision was not just to build an electric car, but to build a better car in every respect. It had to be faster, safer, and more beautiful than its gasoline-powered competitors. The result was the Ion, a sleek, high-performance sedan that shattered every stereotype about electric cars. But building a great car was only half the battle. Alex knew that for EVs to be widely adopted, the fear of running out of power, range anxiety, had to be eliminated. So, Electron did something no other car company would. They began building their own global network, suitable for high-speed charging stations. The manufacturing phase for their first affordable mass-market car, the Arc, was notoriously difficult, a period Alex called production hell. He was known to sleep on the factory floor, personally troubleshooting robotic assembly lines. His demanding, often abrasive style pushed his team to their limits. But it ultimately dragged the company back from the brink of bankruptcy. Electron Automotive didn't just sell cars, it catalyzed a global shift in the automotive industry. forcing every major manufacturer to accelerate their own EV programs. Chapter 6. The Grand Unification. To the outside world, Alex's ventures seemed disparate: rockets, cars, energy, tunnels. To the outside world, Alex's ventures seemed disparate: rockets, cars, energy, tunnels. But in his mind, they were all pieces of a single, integrated puzzle. He wasn't building companies. He was building a self-sustaining ecosystem for the future. He acquired a struggling solar panel company and rebranded it as Helios Grid, which began producing solar roofs and home battery packs. The vision was clear. Which began producing solar roofs and home battery packs. The vision was clear. Helios would capture energy from the sun, which would then power the homes and charge the electron vehicles. It was a closed loop of sustainable energy. Next came the Labyrinth, his tunneling company. The Labyrinth, his tunneling company. Frustrated by soul-crushing city traffic, Alex proposed a network of underground tunnels where electric vehicles could be transported on high-speed skates. While critics dismissed it as a vanity project, Alex saw it as a necessary step to redesigning urban mobility for a denser, more populated future. His most controversial venture was Synapse. This company was working at the bleeding edge of neuroscience, developing a brain-computer interface. Its public mission was to help people with severe neurological disorders, like paralysis. But Alex's long-term vision was far more radical: to create a symbiotic link between human consciousness and artificial intelligence. A way for humanity to keep pace with the machines it was creating. Each company was a pillar supporting a larger structure, a future where energy was clean, transport was efficient, and humanity's potential was augmented by technology. Chapter 7. The First Principles of Progress. What truly set Alex Vance apart was not his wealth or his intellect, but his mental operating system. He was a devout practitioner of first principles thinking, instead of reasoning by analogy. Doing something because it's how it has always been done, he would break down every problem to its fundamental, undeniable truths and reason up from there. Why were rockets expensive? Because they were thrown away. How do you fix that? You learn how to land them. Why do cities have traffic? Because they are 2D transport systems in a 3D world. How do you fix that? You add a layer by going underground. This method allowed him to see solutions suitable for others only saw obstacles. It was also what made him such a difficult and demanding leader. He had little patience for excuses or conventional wisdom. He expected his employees to challenge every assumption and justify every decision from the ground up. His personal life was almost non-existent. He saw sleep as a necessary evil, and hobbies as a waste of processing time. His entire being was dedicated to pushing his projects forward. He didn't see money as a tool for comfort or luxury, but as a resource for problem solving. He didn't see money as a tool for comfort or luxury, but as a resource for problem solving. He famously reinvested his entire fortune, time and again, into his companies. He famously reinvested his entire fortune, time and again, into his companies, often bringing them to the razor's edge of financial ruin in pursuit of a long-term goal. He believed that the greatest risk was not failure, but the failure to try. He believed that the greatest risk was not failure, but the failure to try. Chapter 8. The Agora and the Burden of the Megaphone. Chapter 8. The Agora and the Burden of the Megaphone. As his influence grew, Alex became one of the most polarizing figures on the planet. As his influence grew, Alex became one of the most polarizing figures on the planet. His every move was scrutinized, celebrated, and condemned. His every move was scrutinized, celebrated, and condemned. Seeking a more direct way to communicate his ideas and frustrated with what he saw as biased media narratives, he did the unthinkable. He bought Agora, the world's largest social media platform. His stated goal was to protect free speech, transforming the platform into a global town square for open debate. His stated goal was to protect free speech, transforming the platform into a global town square for open debate. The acquisition was chaotic and controversial. He immediately made sweeping changes. The acquisition was chaotic and controversial. He immediately made sweeping changes to the platform's policies and personnel, leading to an exodus of both users and advertisers. Critics accused him of hubris, of believing he could solve the nuanced complexities of human communication with engineering logic. Supporters hailed him as a champion of free expression, willing to take on a challenge that others were too afraid to touch. The Agora experiment revealed the limits of a purely technical worldview. The reading speed should be 1.3 times the normal speed. The Agora experiment revealed the limits of a purely technical worldview. Alex, the man who could solve orbital mechanics and battery chemistry, found himself wrestling with the messy, unpredictable, and often irrational nature of human society. Found himself wrestling with the messy, unpredictable, and often irrational nature of human society. His public persona became a whirlwind of groundbreaking announcements, bizarre jokes, and fiery online arguments. He was a visionary with the world's biggest megaphone, and it was a burden that seemed to test even his formidable resolve. Chapter 9: The Personal Equation. Chapter 9: The Personal Equation. For all his focus on humanity's future, a crisis brought him crashing back to the deeply personal present. His own father, the mechanic who had watched him build that first generator in the garage, was diagnosed with a rapidly advancing neurodegenerative disease. Doctors gave him only a few years. Suddenly, the abstract mission of Synapse became a desperate race against time. Alex redirected a huge portion of the company's resources to focus specifically on his father's condition. The ethical questions were immense. Was it right to use his immense resources to prioritize one person's health? The project pushed the boundaries of medical science. The team developed a neural implant, suitable not to augment, but to bypass damaged pathways in the brain. The decision to proceed with the first human trial on his own father was agonizing. The procedure was a partial success. It didn't cure the disease, but it halted its progression and restored some of his father's motor functions. He was able to hold a wrench again. For Alex, it was the most profound achievement of his life. For Alex, it was the most profound achievement of his life. It was a tangible result, a solution that could be held and felt. The reading should be held and felt. It was a tangible result, a solution that could be held and felt. It also showed him the immense responsibility that came with the power he had amassed. It also showed him the immense responsibility that came with the power he had amassed. The technology that had given his father a few more years of life also had the potential to be misused in terrifying ways, a paradox that would haunt him. Chapter 10: The Unfinished Blueprint. Chapter 10: The Unfinished Blueprint. What comes next for the man who is already building tomorrow? Alex Vance's journey is far from over. The blueprint in his mind is vast, with entire sections still waiting to be drawn. The blueprint in his mind is vast, with entire sections still waiting to be drawn. Aether Dynamics is preparing for the first crewed mission to Mars, a monumental step. Aether Dynamics is preparing for the first crewed mission to Mars, a monumental step toward making life multiplanetary. Electron Automotive is developing fully autonomous vehicles that could completely redesign cities and human movement. Helios Grid is working on a global energy network that could power the entire world with renewable sources. Helios Grid is working on a global energy network that could power the entire world with renewable sources. And Synapse, the most audacious of them all, continues its delicate dance on the line between healing and enhancement. Alex remains the driving force at the center of it all. A man fueled by an inexhaustible belief in the power of technology to solve our biggest problems. Yet, his path is fraught with peril. He faces technical hurdles, political opposition, and the profound ethical questions his own creations have unleashed. His legacy is yet to be written. Will he be remembered as the visionary who guided humanity to a better future, or as a cautionary tale of ambition untethered from wisdom? The truth is, Alex Vance isn't building the future for us to judge. He is building it for us to inhabit. And his story ends not with a period, but with a question that he poses to all of us. The tools to build a better world are in our hands. What will we choose to create?